now call the Common Council meeting of March 1st, 2022 to order. Roll call, please.
Alderman Kirkowski.
Here.
Lorik.
Here.
Dukenyak.
Here.
Tobin.
Here.
Gale.
Here.
Guzekowski.
Here. Everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Doug, you want to start us off?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 is approval of minutes of February 14th, 2022. Everybody please take a look. And when you are satisfied, there's no errors, omissions, or discussion. Motion, please.
Kirkowski will make a motion to approve the minutes of February 14, 2022.
Oracle second. Roll call.
Alderman Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Tobin.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Number 4 is public hearing for a sanitary sewer service area amendment. It's to consider a proposal to amend the Oak Creek sanitary sewer service area. Catherine, if you'd please read that in the record.
Certainly. Public hearing number 1 is to receive public comment on and reaction to a proposed amendment to the Oak Creek sanitary sewer service area. Applicant is City of Oak Creek. Property owner, City of Oak Creek. Date of notice, January 17th, 2022.
Thank you. Doug?
Thank you and good evening. I am Doug Seymour. I'm the Director of Community Development for the City of Oak Creek, and this is the first of 3 public hearings this evening, and it is on a proposed sanitary sewer area plan amendment for the area in the vicinity of Lakeshore Commons and Lake Vista Park. This hearing is a little bit different than our typical hearings, and that it is co-sponsored and being run in coordination with the Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. And as such, there's a kind of just a very brief agenda as to the format of the hearing this evening. We have, the mayor has called the public hearing to order, and I don't know that there are any other public officials present. And if there are, I apologize if I'm missing anyone. But with that, I'd like to introduce Joel Dietl. Joel's the Chief Land Use Planner for the Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. And Joel's going to give a brief presentation on, why we have, what the sanitary sewer service area plan is, why we have those in place, and how that relates to environmental corridors. And after that, between Joel and I, we'll run you through the proposed changes to the sanitary sewer area service plan, and specifically those changes to the primary environmental corridor that are being discussed this evening. So with that, Joel. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I'm Joel Dietl with SewerPact, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. I'm the Chief Land Use Planner. The reason that we have this amendment before us, I'm going to do a little bit of background and history just to bring us up to speed and up to today. Every community in Southeast Wisconsin that has a publicly owned sewage treatment plant had to be part of a regional water quality management plan. There's a requirement from the Federal Clean Water Act that requires that. There are state statutes that require that. And then there's administrative codes that provide more details about that. In Southeast Wisconsin, SewerPact is the agency that created that regional plan back in 1979. In 1979, when we prepared that plan, it was very broad, very general, and did not go into a lot of details. That plan addressed many issues related to water quality, but related to tonight, 2 of the things that plan addressed was the identification of these sanitary sewer service areas, and within those sanitary sewer service areas, the environmental corridors. Again, the Clean Water Act is very broad and very general about this topic. State statute is also very broad and very general. This administrative code, NR 121, goes into a lot more detail. So with the sewer service area boundary pursuant to those statutes, the federal law, and the administrative code, it's the area within which all sewer development has to be located. No sewer development can occur outside these sewer service areas. And within that sewer service area, every area has to identify those areas which will not be eligible for public sewer service because of the potential for significant adverse water quality impacts. And I'm almost quoting exactly what the state statute or what the administrative code says. So those are the two main things that are then addressed in these individual sewer service area plans. When we completed that regional plan in 1979, we knew that the mapping that we used was not going to be detailed enough for the review of sanitary sewer extensions because there are other administrative codes that require the DNR to be in conformance with this regional water quality management plan and the sewer service area plans, which are amendments of that regional plan. There's an administrative code that says they have to be in conformance with all the sewer extensions have to be in conformance with that regional plan inside the sewer service areas, outside the environmental corridors. And I should take a quick step back. It's not just Southeast Wisconsin that has to do this, it's all the urban areas within the state. So then in 1994, Sewer PAG did work with the city of Oak Creek, prepared a sewer service area plan, identifying the boundary, which is essentially the entire city, and identified these environmental corridors. They comprise three types: primary environmental corridors, which we consider to be the largest and most important; secondary environmental corridors, which are smaller in size and in the big scheme of things, a little bit less important. And the third category is isolated natural resource areas. All the sewer PAC's regional plans recommend the protection of the primary environmental corridors, consistent with this regional water quality management plan, consistent with the administrative code. Further clarification and direction came over the years through the 80s and 90s. We started doing these local plans. The DNR started reviewing and approving them. The DNR created policy to guide what it meant when they said something in the administrative codes, so that it boiled down to any encroachment of sewer development into the lowland portions of an environmental corridor, primary, secondary, or isolated. Lowland portions being wetlands, floodplains, shorelands, or steep slopes immediately adjacent to one of those are not eligible for public sewer service. And so that's the policy that we've been following, the guidance we've been following, the administrative code that we've been following since the early 1980s after that regional plan was approved. Those are the also noted in this Oak Creek Sewer Service Area Plan. There is a process to change those, though, the boundaries of the sewer service areas and the boundaries of these environmental corridors. That process is called an amendment. Just like the plan for Oak Creek is an amendment to the regional plan, there can be an amendment to the Oak Creek plan to change something in that plan. We have done these amendments for changing the boundaries of sewer service areas dozens of times, over 50 times since the early 80s. For changing these environmental corridors, we've probably only done that a dozen times. In this instance, it's a little bit different. There's a map that shows the aerial photograph from that sewer service area plan. Yep, it's on everybody's screen. Those are the maps that show those environmental corridors in that crosshatch pattern. In this case, that would be the primary environmental corridor for the subject property. The map on the left then is a larger overview of that larger area. So that within the yellow, public sewer extensions are consistent with the plan, sewer development is consistent with the plan, and absent any other issues can be approved by the local community and can be approved by the DNR. Within that primary environmental corridor, it would not be able to be approved. However, in this instance, when the sewer extensions came in, we were alerted to the fact that part of the development was proposed in this primary environmental corridor. That's what triggered this amendment process. Because the city, of course, has a lot of invested into the development of this area. There was that history about this was a contaminated site. Arsenic had to be removed. Soils had to be capped. We had meetings with the DNR. City staff and us had meetings with the DNR, verified this amendment process was still required, even though the EPA and the DNR said clean that site up. And part of that site happened to be this primary environmental corridor. DNR confirmed that we still had to do the amendments. Our executive director made the decision that this, our standard operating procedure for these kinds of changes of these environmental corridors would require mitigation. DNR staff concurred with that, left the details up to Sewer PAC. Working with the city, trying to find out the distinctions and differences between each of these areas within this original primary environmental corridor. Sewer PAC staff came up with sort of a breakdown of the different parts of the primary environmental corridor and what type and how much mitigation would be appropriate for each of those portions of that primary. So the area that's now shown in the maps that's crosshatched, also shaded in green, is that primary corridor. The part that's outlined in orange, that would be west of Lake Vista Boulevard, is the part that's going to be removed and no longer be primary environmental corridor. That loss is the part that has to be mitigated. The mitigation is being proposed, one, in the blue crosshatched areas in this map, both north in Lake Vista Park and to the south, just on the east side of Lake Vista Boulevard. There's a second site also in Abershine Park. I knew I was going to screw that one up. That also would be added to the primary environmental corridor. Those changes would be consistent with our policies and practices for mitigation in the past, the details of which the DNR was going to leave up to us. With not only the addition of those areas to the primary, but in some instances, cleaning up what's in that primary now or the area to be added so that it meets the definition and criteria of these environmental corridors. Because the environment, and I should have mentioned that earlier too, the environmental corridors is what Sewer PAC considers the last remaining most important natural resource features in southeast Wisconsin. So it's the larger woodlands, the larger wetlands, the larger floodplains, and particularly as they overlap one another. They provide a lot of benefits from an environmental standpoint, from a wildlife habitat standpoint, from an aesthetic standpoint, and lots of reasons. And different areas of the state do it a little bit different. But for southeast Wisconsin, we have these environmental corridors. So those resource values that are being lost are going to be replaced in these areas that are being added to the primary, and that's what we refer to as the mitigation. Unique to this site is another idea that we had in our early discussions, or not early, but in our later discussions about this mitigation. We figured out that actually the best place to do the mitigation is where there's good natural resource features already, such as those located in Bender Park. But we didn't have enough time to contact the county, and we also knew that going through the county was not going to be fast. And there was a tight time frame to get this thing in front of the city, to get this in front of our commission, and then to get this in front of the DNR. So we did something unique. We proposed in this proposed amendment a second option that, if approved by everybody, could be completed administratively. Wouldn't have to come back to the city, wouldn't have to come back to Sewer PAC full commission, and it wouldn't have to come back to the DNR. We could work it out administratively, staff to staff, to change those locations to Bender Park and do the mitigation there. It can be all of it. It can be part of it. The way it's written right now, it's wide open from that standpoint. As long as that those criteria that the mitigation occur as mitigation, and no less than 1-to-1, to be replacing the resources that were lost. So that's the amendment in front of us. Like I said, doing an amendment is not uncommon for changing the boundary of a sewer service area. Changing the boundary of an environmental corridor has probably only occurred about a dozen times. But we have done it before. They have been approved by the DNR before. And so this would be the process that we go through to get that done. If this is approved by the city tonight, then it would move on to our full commission. It's already been before a committee of Sewer PAC, the Planning and Research Committee. They provide recommendations to our full commission. They recommended approval. If the city also approves this, all that information plus this amendment, plus whatever comes out of this public hearing, will be presented to our full commission, and they will also have to decide if they want to adopt this or not. Whether they do or not, if they do, it's forwarded automatically to the DNR. We've already provided them a draft in hopes that that speeds up their review, and that is a process that they allow. So if it is approved by our full commission and the city, then it moves automatically. Well, actually I have to fill in some blanks, but then it goes to the DNR for their review and approval. If they approve it, that opens up the last step in that sewer extension process. The other thing I could mention, I didn't anticipate going into those details, but we have reviewed, the sewer pack and the DNR have reviewed the sewer extensions for this area and have tentatively approved them, while actually allowing that construction to occur in this primary environmental corridor, just that no buildings be connected to those sewers. That last step is still being held in abeyance until the sewer service area amendment process is done. Once that amendment is approved by the DNR, that opens up connections to those sewers, and then those buildings could be built. And then the mitigation can occur after that. We're hoping to get that mitigation plan approved, and we are recommending that that plan also be approved by the city, the mitigation plan, as soon as possible. But the implementation of that mitigation plan can occur after all this. I think the only other thing to mention is that if the DNR does have any concerns or questions, they will contact all of us. And then probably we'll have to have meetings to try to work out whatever the concerns or issues may be. They have approved these before. The difference being that this is a larger loss of primary environmental corridor than it's been before. And there are some wetlands in this area that have not been done before. Most of the amendment, or all the other amendments of primary environmental corridor have been the upland portions. But we've talked about this, and clearly the staff is open to this. I guess that's the end of my presentation, and if you had questions now or later, I'll stay to answer those.
And thank you, Joe.
Thank you. And if I may, Mayor, maybe just to add a few thoughts to that. I don't want to go over the entire thing. Joel did a really good job of explaining the basis for why we're here this evening. But, from the city's perspective, environmental corridors are very important to us. There's no question. And I think that the things that we've been doing along the lakefront have been consistent with that, with respect to the city's acquisition of properties for preservation purposes. This very unique circumstance, and Joel alluded to it, is that these properties have a legacy of environmental contamination, whether it's the Newport Chemical Company or the things that happen adjacent to that with the arsenic contamination. These properties were under orders from the EPA, in some cases, and the DNR, to remove a lot of that and to cap it. And you wouldn't necessarily think of, well, a brownfield or remediated brownfield, well, that's a primary environmental corridor. But under the terms of the 1994 plan, which you saw earlier, it was. And, essentially the character of that area of those properties has changed so substantially since that time that the city, from our purview, felt that they no longer qualified as part of an environmental corridor. And that's what this amendment is to clarify that, to actually have somebody go out there, look at the values of those properties and really identify what's in the corridor, what's not in the corridor. In some cases it grows, some cases it shrinks. And Sewer Pack's done that. They've been out there. We have a really good idea of where the corridor really needs to be and wants to be right now. And the city is prepared to work with the county and with some of the other properties that we have under our control to really expand upon that corridor. And it's, when Joel said it's a minimum of 1 to 1, I mean, it's more than that. Likely be more in the range of 1.5 to 1 for that. And we feel in areas that are far superior from an environmental perspective than the areas that are being removed the corridor. I mean, one thing you need to remember as well is, even though there's, Joel said the area in orange that you see there, it's a relatively large area. Areas within that will still be preserved. We're not developing within the ABA, that arsenic contamination area. There's areas of buffer of that AEB that will not be developed. So even though a lot of it's being removed, really the only portion that's being developed, so to speak, is this area right along Lake Vista Parkway. And only a portion of that was in the original 1994 plan. So the city, the reason why we are preserving and investing in the lakefront to the extent that we are, is we want to make that into parkland. We want to make that into publicly accessible spaces, which is one of the goals of primary environmental corridors. And they don't just exist to preserve a plant species or what have you. Parks are a huge part of the criteria for our PEC, and we feel that what we're doing this evening is entirely consistent with the goals of the sewer pact, the DNR, and the city for preserving and enhancing environmental corridors, at the same time cleaning up brownfields and providing public access to a lakefront that hasn't been accessible in decades. So I do have some other exhibits and some information available if there are any other questions that arise. But with that, Mayor, I know this is a public hearing. If you'd like to open up the public hearing and we take public comment, and subsequent to that, we can address any questions that arise.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Doug. As Doug said, this is a public hearing. We will make 3 calls. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium, give your name and address for the record. This will be the first call. Anybody wishing to speak? Second call, anybody wishing to speak? Item 4. Third and final call, anybody wishing to speak? Okay, we will now close the public hearing and go on to item 5, which is consideration of a resolution adopting an amendment to the sanitary sewer service plan for the city of Oak Creek. Then we'll open it up to council for any questions or comments.
Maybe as a preamble to that as well, in the mitigation plan that Joel spoke of, the city is well into that preparation, and in fact has a sewer pack has already reviewed a draft of that. We are putting the finishing touches on that, including our commitment to work with the county on Bender Park lands and to look on the lands that we own already along the lakefront to see if there's opportunities for further enhancement of the corridor there. So it's not just a promise; it's something that we've been executing upon since late October, I think, to fulfill the goals of everyone in the sanitary sewer amendment.
Thank you, Doug. Councilman? Steve, you want to start us off?
Just want to thank Joel for coming up and giving that detailed explanation. Appreciate it.
Okay. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. This process involving sewer pack and DNR, do we have any timeline on that? I heard what you just said about it's in the process already, but is there any end game on this?
Absolutely. I think this started probably in October of 2021. And at that point, as the plans for sanitary sewer were being reviewed, they noticed there was this incursion into the PEC, the primary environmental corridor. And that was flagged by sewer pack. And since that time, we've both been working very diligently. And I might add a word of personal thanks to Joel and his staff and the sewer pack staff for really keeping this on schedule and taking this through a very comprehensive process that in some cases can take much longer, and appreciate their commitment to working with the city, recognizing the importance of not only the PEC, but the unique development that's taking place adjacent to it. So we are very much into that process. That process will conclude in some respects with the adoption of the ordinance, the resolution by this council and the subsequent adoption of the amendment by the Regional Planning Commission at their meeting on March 9th. Still has to be approved by the DNR, but there, as Joel said, there are certain things that can happen right now that have already been approved with respect to crossings of the PEC for sanitary sewer, just that you can't do the vertical construction within the PEC within that sewer area. So well on our way. It's been reviewed by our consultants, by sewer pack, and I'm glad to hear, Joel, thank you, that DNR has had a preview of this so that we can make this as smooth as possible for everyone involved.
I guess that leads me into my next question, because when I heard DNR, that's a little scary. That can take forever. But does this have any direct effect on phase 1 of Lakeshore Commons?
It does. And the fact that a portion of that was in the PEC, albeit, again, the one that was mapped in 1994, that if this process would have not have been gone through, those areas could not have been developed with those, in this case, the single family homes.
Hey, you mentioned vertical, construction?
Yes.
And I heard from Joel, it was more of a hookup, in the sewer
Yes.
connection? Is that one and the same? Or is,
He's more correct.
okay,
It's all the.
I'm sorry, can we get Jen? Should be used to that.
Yes, I should be. Yeah, don't speak until into the microphone. Technically, it's all infrastructure is allowed right now. That's it. So sewer, water, roads, gas, electric, all that kind of stuff can be constructed now. Nothing can be built that hooks up to the sanitary sewers. And then in terms of the timeframe, if the full commission, Sewer PAC's full commission would approve it, actually adopt it at their March 9th meeting, within a week or two, we send it to the DNR. They already have a draft. And if there are no changes, I'll let them know that right away. And then their review would normally take 1 to 2 months. When there are issues like this, it takes longer. But because we've already shown them and talked to them about this, they said they would do what they can to speed this along. So my guess is it won't be less than 1 to 2 months, but I'm hoping that it can be really close to 1 to 2 months.
What portions of the development can proceed in that interim?
Yes, outside the PEC, you're
So
fine.
Are you
You're okay.
interacting with, F Street right now? Have they had any comment on this?
They are aware of the situation and they are supportive of the city's efforts to modify the PEC boundary.
Okay, they're not alarmed in any way to,
I can't speak for them on that, but,
okay, well, that's,
it's been a very well-defined and executed process
all right,
on everyone's
Okay.
part.
all right, thank you.
Greg? I just have a question, maybe more clarification for myself. If I heard the explanation correctly, this is just kind of a swap in designation for areas. We're removing primary environmental corridor from one section and renaming it elsewhere. I guess my question is, if you can provide maybe a brief explanation as to why an area might originally be named, because it sounds like, I guess I'm just clarifying, it's not like we're removing a environmental area that was home to some type of species and just picking land elsewhere. It sounds like we're removing a contaminated area and picking much cleaner area to name environmental corridor. So it's a positive, it sounds like. Is that
Yes, if it works out the way we plan, it will be a positive at the end.
Okay.
So the way the environmental corridors were first mapped by us back in 1963. So even back then, this area was identified as primary environmental corridor. I'm not positive, I don't know when contamination started. We do know that from review of historic aerial photographs, it was more recent. The physical site changes to that area happened much more recently, like within the 90s and 2000s. Contamination probably occurred earlier than that, but nothing that we could see on the aerial photographs. In this particular area, this particular primary environmental corridor was comprised primarily, almost entirely of woodlands and just average woodlands and pockets of wetlands. So clearly, because of the size between and that composition, that meets our corridor criteria for primary. We have a total size, a width requirement, and the natural resources that make up the corridor. We have a point value for that. And we add those up, and if it's 10 points or more, it's eligible to be a primary. And then if it meets the size criteria and the width criteria, it is a primary environmental corridor. So from a standpoint of the quality of it, as far as we know, it was just an average PEC, primary corridor. The lands to the south in Bender Park, we have a naturalist on staff. He believes there's some really nice stuff down there. And then we're encouraged that we know that the Milwaukee County has permanent staff and permanent programs in place to do mitigation, restoration, enhancement efforts. If we can get them to focus some of those efforts in Bender Park, even if it's something that they were already planning to do, it don't matter. It doesn't matter to us, as long as those lands get identified as a primary environmental corridor and are adjacent to an existing primary environmental corridor. Then that's as good or better than what the rest of us could have done. But if that doesn't work out, those lands identified on those maps will be good enough too. But Bender Park would be so much better from a quality standpoint if that could be done. Even a combination, if some of that could be done in Bender Park, would be great. So our staff is excited about those opportunities as well. I've worked with Milwaukee County staff on other projects. I know that they take that seriously, that, you know, the staff who actually does the work on mitigation, restoration, enhancement activities takes their work seriously. And I think they would be excited too. Of course, it's going to come down to who's going to do the work. Is there extra money required? Those are details that you know, might cause a hiccup or something. But from the standpoint of replacing that primary environmental corridor, the sewer pack staff is confident that what we show here is good enough, and anything in Bender Park would be awesome.
Thank you. Rich?
Yeah, Alderman Dukenyak, third district, and Joel, you may be able to answer this, or Doug. You mentioned about working with Milwaukee County and possibly Bender Park. Are you able to share with us? I mean, what areas that you are hoping to be able to use, or targeting a specific area? And Joel, you mentioned, the lands to the south and west in Bender Park would, I'm not environmentalist, but they sure would seem to be.
Alderman, I mean, there are areas of Bender Park that have very similar characteristics, for whatever reason are not part of the corridor right now. We know where those are. We know the areas that we'd love to talk to the county about bringing into the corridor. It's just I don't have an exhibit of that right now.
Okay. And then one other question. Once that mitigation work has been planned and eventually begun, is there a time limit? I mean, is there a 5-year window, 10-year window that all of this work has to be completed?
It would be, and I think we're looking much more recent than that, probably in the neighborhood of 2 years.
Oh, okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion and or questions, motion please.
Someone will make a motion to adopt resolution number 12311, adopting an amendment to the sanitary sewer service plan for the city of Oak Creek.
Roll call.
Alderman Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye. Now we'll get us to item 6, our next public hearing. That is consideration of an amendment to the comprehensive plan to the city of Oak Creek. It was adopted March 3rd, 2020 and amended November 17th, 2020 as it relates to the properties at 4005, 4060, and 4159 East Lake Vista Parkway. Catherine, if you would, please.
Certainly. Published January 26, 2022, public hearing number 2 is to consider an amendment to the comprehensive plan, City of Oak Creek, adopted March 3rd, 2020, amended November 17th, 2020, as it relates to the properties at 4005, 4060, and 4159 East Lake Vista Parkway. Applicant is City of Oak Creek. Property owner, F Street OCLV LLC. Dated notice is January 19th, 2022.
Thank you, Catherine. Doug?
Thanks again. And this comprehensive plan, this proposed comprehensive plan amendment, really is in support of the action that you just took with respect to the amendment to the sanitary sewer area plan, and that now that we've identified which areas are PAC and are not, subsequently are not PAC, we are changing our comprehensive plan and the mapping of that plan to reflect those new boundaries. So you'll see in there, and you can kind of see it in here, the areas that were existing on the, I'm not sure, left or right, depending on how you're looking at that, probably left for everybody. How the map is shown right now, and it's really kind of generic, and then based on, you know, at that level, at that scale, we didn't necessarily do a great job of detailing the extensive Lake Vista Park or the areas for preservation. The proposal makes that very crystal clear as to which areas are being preserved and being in the green, and which areas which are kind of the maroon, which would be available for development. Also on the economic development framework plan, it shows the existing area in kind of that maroon as a mixed-use development. The proposal, again, clarifies which areas are available for mixed-use development and which areas are part of the park and or PEC and are not available. And finally, as part of the Parks and Open Space Plan, we know the boundaries of Lake Vista Park. They weren't shown accurately on the comprehensive plan. We are changing that and proposing that the boundaries of the park be reformalized as part of the Parks and Open Space Plan. You'll also see that it also includes this area, what we call the AEBA. It's essentially an area that was contaminated with arsenic that's been since mediated, but that's not an area that will be developed. And I think that if that wasn't brought out as part of the earlier discussion, that's important as well, because even though this area technically is being taken out of primary environmental corridor, it's still a good large portion that won't be developed. It'll remain as open space, and buffers to that will remain as open space. So these three changes to the comprehensive plan, in effect, implement the changes to the sanitary sewer area plan that the council just adopted via resolution. So this is a public hearing. If anyone has any questions or comments regarding those proposed changes to the city's comprehensive plan, I would ask that you please approach the podium, give your name and address, and proceed to address your questions or comments to the common council. This public hearing is open.
Thank you, Doug, and this will be the first call. Anybody wishing to speak? Come on up, name and address, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the council, Mr. Mayor. My name is Sam Linda. I live at 1701 West Putes Road. I'm the property owner at 3951 East Ryan Road. And in the maps that are up there, I'm trying to find out, is the sewer going to be extended to that land west of Fifth Avenue and become part of that plan?
With that, Matt, you want to take that one?
Yes, I will, Mayor. At this point, under this project, no, it's going to extend down to Lake Vista Boulevard. There is potential and proposed future plans to move sanitary to the south and then to the west, which potentially could develop and feed that development up along Fifth Avenue extension that we did in 2015. So as far as that property, I'm not sure if it would extend all the way to the property that you speak of.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
This will be the second call. Anybody wishing to speak? And third and final call. Anybody wishing to speak on the item, please give your name and address at the podium. Okay, we will now close the public hearing and go on to consideration of an ordinance adopting the amendment to the comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Creek, adopted March 3rd, 2020, for the properties at 4005, 4060, and 4159 East Lake Vista Parkway. Discussion? Anything? I think it was very well covered. If there's no questions or discussion, motion please.
Yeah, we'll move to approve ordinance number 3029, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan, City of Oak Creek, adopted March 3rd, 2020 for properties at 4005, 4060, and 4159 East Lake Vista Parkway.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Tillman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye. And item 8 is also a public hearing, and it's consideration of an amendment to the comprehensive plan, City of Oak Creek, adopted March 3rd, 2020, amended November 17th, 2020, as it relates to the properties at 2231 West Putes Road and 8843R South 13th and 8950 South 20th Street. Oh, Catherine, please read that in the record.
Published January 26, 2022, public hearing number 3 is to consider an amendment to the comprehensive plan, City of Oak Creek, adopted March 3rd, 2020, amended November 17th, 2020, as it relates to the property at 2231 West Putes, 8843 RS South 13th Street, and 8950 South 20th Street. Applicant is CR Defco LLC. Property owner is CCR Herzbach 2 Ltd. Partnership and WRE Herzbach 3 Ltd. Partnership. Date of notice is January 19th, 2022.
Thank you, Catherine. Doug?
Thank you. The request before the common council this evening is to amend the land use plan and the city's comp plan from single-family detached to single-family attached for a portion of the properties that were previously mentioned. Now, it's important to note that amending the land use plan and the comp plan, although it would allow for future consideration of development proposals, it does not endorse any one development proposal or concept that may be going through the process right now. There's a separate entitlement process that must be and will be gone through in order for any development to occur on those properties. But just as kind of a graphic example, it's kind of broken down into two zones, just to make it a little easier. Zone 2 is not changing. And Zone 1 is changing from single-family attached, which is what you would consider a traditional single-family subdivision, to single-family attached, which allows for residences, single-family residences which are attached, whether it's zero lot line, or in the case of what is being proposed, a series of single-family residences which are attached by a common wall. Won't get too much into that development proposal unless there's any other questions about that. It is going through the process. It has been introduced before the Plan Commission with the concept plan and will be further reviewed by staff and the Plan Commission as it moves through that process. But it's important to note that the first step in that would be a change to the comprehensive plan. And kind of in support of that, a portion of the property already is zoned for duplexes and two families. So from that perspective, I mean, there is some, I don't want to call it precedent, but certainly some existing conditions which lend some credence to the request to amend the comprehensive plan for single family detached. This is just a rough idea of the concept plan that's out there right now. You can see it affects only that eastern portion of that property. And just a very brief introduction, it's for these single family attached structures. So you'll see a series of these homes, these residences attached via common walls, which, you know, it's not traditionally single family, no, but it's not traditionally multifamily as well. So just, there's some history on this property. I won't go into it, but essentially a lot of this property was partially developed with infrastructure as part of a plan to extend that north to serve the Apple Creek Farm subdivision and some infrastructure needs that the city had for that. And kind of, again, going into that, any questions about, you know, what the comprehensive plan does call for an area. Again, single family attached means two family residential, row homes, townhomes, or duplexes that share at least one common wall with an adjacent dwelling, and each unit has a separate entrance. So it does not change the comp plan on the western portion, only on the eastern portion, and it gives some guidance as to where those single family attached comp plan areas should be, and one of those should be, so it should be concentrated along major transportation corridors, buffering single family detached neighborhoods, commercial and industrial uses. Give you some existing context. This is the current comprehensive plan. The areas in yellow are shown as single family detached. The areas in red are shown as commercial. There is some floodway in there, and there's also some multifamily, which is shown both north of this in the area of the Chateau condos, and as well to the further south as you get into the Tanglewood area. In staff's evaluation of this request, we did note that the concept plan does meet the definition of a single family attached land use category, and those single family attached units would be permissible under a PUD in the new zoning code update. It calls for an existing mix of residential housing types in this immediate area. And again, that two of these properties have been zoned RD1 for duplexes since the 1990s, and were shown and identified for two family or townhouse residential in the previous comprehensive plan. So with that, this is a public hearing. Would ask that anyone who has any questions or comments regarding the proposal to amend the comprehensive plan for the properties at 2231 West Puch Road, 8843R South 13th Street, and 8950 South 20th Street, to please approach the podium, give your name and address, and proceed to address your questions and or comments to the common council. This public hearing is now open.
Thank you, Doug. As Doug stated, there will be 3 calls. This will be the first. Anybody wishing to speak, please approach the podium and name and address, please.
I'm Barbara Linder,
You
24.
can pull the microphone down if you like, ma'am. There you
I'm
go.
Barbara Linder, 2411 West Puch Road. And I know you're saying that it's to the east is where you're going to do the developing and the zoning. But since this property is owned all by one person, I would like it known that we would never want to have this where they can have multi-families in there. You call it this, single family attached? Well, this we would never want. This by our property was always zoned single family, and that's how it should stay. I mean, I have fought this to keep that single family all through the Honadel project, all through everything. I have been down to City Hall many times to keep that single family. And I'm feeling that what's gonna happen if he gets this changed, because he owns all this property, they're gonna try to change that too, next to our property.
You're talking,
For the zoning.
you're talking zone 2.
Yes. And if that was changed, they could have basically along the side of our property, like 16 families. Now, who would want their home boarded by that many families?
Well, first of all, right now, we're talking about zone 1 and zone 2 and what's in front of us on the agenda, so you're really speculating on what could be on zone 2. Also, it's property owner's right to ask for a rezone of his own property. So keep that in mind too. So again, this is at the request of the property owner as to what they'd like to do with their property.
Well, we're a property owner and we'd like,
Correct.
so that's why we're
Correct, you
here.
are, but again, you can't deter the value of his or negatively affect the value of his property or impede it because of something you want. So he's allowed within the rights to ask for this.
I think, but it is important to note that this request does not change or alter the future land use on zone 2, only on zone 1, which is east of your property. And even under the concept plan that's out there, I mean, the bulk of those single family attached structures, would be located to the south and east of your property.
Again, we're not really talking that, but part of zone 2 was very difficult. At least when we had the neighborhood meeting sometime back in December, it's a lot of wetlands and difficulties in there developing that.
There is, and that is why years ago, when other people owned the property, they wanted it to be multifamily against us. And the zoning was brought up for to rezone there many times. And we said no, because this has always been single family.
Again,
This proposal does not change the future land use.
no, we're not
the area
changing that
zone
at
2.
all in zone 2.
All right.
Second call. Anybody wishing to speak, please approach podium. Name and address. Third and final call. Anybody wishing to speak, please approach podium. Name and address. Okay, we will now close the public hearing and go to consideration of the ordinance number 3030, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Creek, adopted March 3rd, 2020 for the properties at 2231 West Putes Road and 8843R South 13th Street and 8950 South 20th. Questions, comments?
And I will note that the developers are present should you have any questions.
Anybody?
We talked about it at the Plan Commission at length a couple of times, so.
Yeah, we did. Developers came in, oh boy, sometime in the fall, I want to say November, October-ish, gave us a presentation, conceptual of what was to be done. Neighborhood meeting happened, I don't know the exact date, I just remember it was December timeframe. They met with a group of neighbors, explained what might, what they were intending, explained the challenges between the two zones. And I think Doug clearly stated it was always set up for multifamily duplex or townhomes, different concept, given the flavor of what's being developed today. And what they really needed was that entrance road fell into zone 2. Doug had the picture up there before between the two. So, that's really the meat on the bone on this one. Any questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, motion.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the common council adopt ordinance number 3030, an ordinance adopting the
and an amendment to the comprehensive plan, City of Oak Creek, for the properties at 2231 West Putes Road, 8843R South 13th Street, and 8950 South 20th Street.
Oracle second. Roll call.
Alderman Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
And item 10 under old business is consideration of ordinance number 3028, repealing and recreating chapter 17, the zoning code of the municipal code that was held 2/14/22. Doug, please, if you would.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, the public hearing on the adoption of the new zoning code was previously held by this council on February 14th. At that point in time, we wanted to give the council some additional time to review the plan, to ask staff any questions, to identify any issues that they felt needed further explanation or further investigation. And we're happy to offer you that opportunity, and still would offer you that opportunity over the next few weeks to do that if you felt you weren't ready to adopt that this evening. But again, I would ask you that if there are any areas for which you have questions or concerns, please contact myself or Carrie so that we can get those out in the open, so they can identify those, so that we can move forward with this this very important adoption of this ordinance within the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Questions, comments for Doug? Nothing? Yeah, Ken.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just, I know, Doug, this has been a haul for you and your folks, and, so I think the final document we've been looking at here, I think is very well vetted, very well gone through. Obviously, what we adopt, just as we've seen here tonight already, if we need to change something, we'll change something. It's just the way it works. You don't know everything, you don't know everything that's gonna come down the pike. So I think we've got a great framework here. I think we'll be very comfortable adopting what you've put in front of us tonight, so.
And if I might add, Mayor, Alderman Dukenyak, third district. I had two third district residents, provide some comments or input. One of them is in attendance tonight, and I know that that individual has approached city staff, other elected officials. And then we also had the other resident at the previous common council meeting that had the issues about the lighting. So I'm wondering if anything had been addressed about those two constituents. I wouldn't call them concerns, but about their input to the zoning and sign.
Absolutely, and thank you for that, Alderman. The issues that were brought forth regarding lighting, and specifically residential lighting, were some really great input, and we have taken that back with our consultant, and I think that the revised draft that you will see, should you choose to adopt this at a subsequent meeting, will be reflective of some of those, but probably not all of those comments.
Oh, good.
And I'm not sure what specifically you're referring to about your other constituent, but I know that if it was talking about RVs, was that the one?
I mean,
I don't know, but that issue was vetted substantially by the Plan Commission and was.
Doug, and I guess I'll welcome that resident here to, let his thoughts be known.
Again, not a public hearing, but the mayor, if you so choose to. If you.
Mayor Dan can.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It's past time for me to comment. They should have said something a little bit earlier, but,
You don't come here
my
just to
concern,
watch. Name and address, Mark.
it's Mark Verhalen, 9330 South Nicholson Road. My concern with this, earlier on, and I did, contact some of the staff and talk to, Rich about it, because he was my alderman before the district changed. But my concern was, the city's, rules concerning the number of homes on dead-end streets. And my concern was that it was kind of an unfounded rule to be in the book, because it restricts the amount of homes that can be put on a dead-end street, irregardless of, there's a 500 foot or 1,500 foot rule. I don't know which it is anymore.
And I think that's certainly something that we've actually discussed as recently as this afternoon. But that's a chapter 14 requirement. That's a subdivision and plating requirement. That's not part of the zoning code.
Anyway, but to finish up, the number of homes allowed on a dead-end street, even though it's not in this chapter, it does kind of pertain to residential development. It restricts the number of homes you can put on a dead-end street. There's streets in Oak Creek that are half a mile long, and there's properties all over on these streets that could be developed, but they're restricted because of the number of homes. So, you know, if you're a property owner on a street that's a mile long, and it limits you to 15 homes, if there's 15 homes that were built 40 years ago, you know, you might own 20 acres on that street, you can't put another house on that street. So it's kind of one of those rules that it was initiated by a previous fire chief, because he was concerned, because I talked to him too as well, about availability of fire hydrants for homes. But if there's city water down the street and there's fire hydrants all the way down, it kind of nullifies the 500-foot rule. So, you know, it's something that should be looked at in the future and hopefully can be changed.
Well taken, Mark, and we've talked about that. Anybody else? Is council, go ahead, Steve.
I just wanted to ask Rich, were you talking about that International Dark Sky Association? Yeah. For what it's worth, I went to the website, based on the residents' presentation, and, to make a long story short, it was some great information, but I'm not so sure Oak Creek fits into all the things that organization wants or subscribes to. And I made them mention that with the new lights at the varsity baseball field, I think that those go a long way in trying to mitigate the, like as I said, hallelujah effect from the Rock, but the old lights they have. So as much as I liked reading that information, I don't think we're going to be able to do much to get involved in the Dark Sky Association. For what it's worth.
No, you're right. It was just some of the concepts I think she was more interested in us adopting, when we don't need, you know, the temperature color lights that are out there. And we've already started putting those restrictions going forward. We've learned some valuable lessons with some of the developments that went on, particularly Ken in your area. I know
That's what happens when technology changes much faster than your zoning code.
Yeah, without a doubt, building materials and things of that nature too. So, but the beauty of this is it is a fluid document, and as needed, as lessons are learned, we can adjust. So, just as Mark said.
Hey, I just want to follow up with Doug. Doug, now you did mention that you guys are still working as a staff on some of this stuff. Did you prefer us to hold it again and codify that formally, or what do you want to be doing?
No, I think that certainly the council can do with it as they will, but I think given the fact that you probably haven't seen the changes that we're proposing to the lighting section of that, I would be comfortable with holding this over to the next meeting, and hopefully we can take action at that point.
Andrew, any?
Okay.
Good
Councilman? No, I have no objections. It's a lot to digest. We've seen it a lot at planning. Carrie did a really nice synopsis with us last time through. Other than those couple of questions, again, they've been working at this a very long time, so.
So we're gonna, the consensus is hold for a date certain until the next meeting?
Probably the next one, which would be March 15th. All right, if there's no further discussion, motion.
We'll move to hold ordinance 3028, item number 10, repealing and recreating chapter 17 zoning code of municipal code until March 15th, 2022.
Guzekowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Under new business, item 11 is consideration of a motion to approve the plan of finance for $2,325,000 taxable general obligation refund bonds. Max, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Mayor Bukavich and Common Council, Max Kagan, Assistant City Administrator Comptroller. So before you tonight is the plan of finance for the issuance of $2,325,000 of taxable general obligation refunding bonds. And this is to refinance debt that was issued in early 2020 related to an upfront developer grant for Stand Rock Hospitality per their finance development agreement for the construction of the hotel and convention center. And then the next item is the corresponding parameters resolution that would authorize the sale. And what I'll do is I'll have Justin Fisher, who's the Director of Public Finance for Baird, provide the council with some additional details on our upcoming debt issuance.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, Mayor. Great to see everyone again. So tonight I'll keep this pretty brief from our usual presentations, as there's been a lot of work that has gone into this. And really, as Max just mentioned, this is refinancing an issuance that the city did back in 2020 for one of the development projects within TID number 12. So in front of you, you have a presentation packet. On page 2, I'll go through the timeline for this financing. So tonight, the council would consider the plan of finance parameters resolution. This will give the city administrator, assistant city administrator, comptroller authority to sign off on the bond sale. We're looking at trying to get into the market sooner rather than later. We've been doing a lot of preparations leading up to this meeting. We've got the official statement already put together. We've gone through the formal bond rating process with Moody's, where Andrew and Max and myself participated in the rating call with Moody's, and really did a more of a detailed deep dive for them to give them a really good update of all the different TIFs and developments and what the city has been doing since our last call. So we were affirmed the AA2 bond credit rating, so that's great news. So we're ready to get in position and go as soon as possible, because as you have all seen on the news, there's a lot going on globally, and that effect is essentially reducing interest rates a little bit. So we're trying to get our ducks in order. So hopefully by early next week we could take advantage of this drop that we're seeing in the interest rates right now. So the closing would be anticipated for April of 2022. The estimated size, again, $2,325,000. This is a taxable general obligation refunding bond, refinancing the 2020 notes. The structure is going to be April 1 of 2023 to 2036. First interest next year, April 1, 2023, callable April 1, 2029. Estimated rate around 2.93%, max parameter of 3.75. So as you can see, we're still at historically low interest rates. Yes, interest rates have gone up a little bit since the beginning of the year with all the inflationary talks, and then you've seen it when you go to the grocery store everywhere, the inflationary items that you've seen. It's also affected interest rates, but when you look at this, we're still at historically low interest rates, so it's still a really good time to be in the bond market. So going to page 3 here, when you look at this, a lot of numbers on the page. Left side of the page, that's the projected revenues for TID number 12. So as you can see there, the first projected tax revenue from that is in 2023. So that's how we structured everything. We did the short-term financing to get the development up and running, and essentially now, it's built, it goes on the tax roll, and then it's usually a 2-year lag from the time of construction to the time you see tax revenue. So then we're timing it all for the city to have a first debt service payment in 2023. So that issuance that was done in 2020, you can see that basically we had capitalized interest. So the city had no debt service payments tied to that. We're taking that out, having a first payment in 2023 to match up with the revenues that are expected within number 12. So you don't have to use fund balance or pull from the general fund or some other source of funds. So it all lines up very nicely there. Then going to page 4, this is something I've shown council many times before, and I think that there's a really good story to share tonight that I shared with Moody's and with Max and Andrew. Is when we started looking at this back in 2019, 2018, I gave a presentation and told the council at that particular time, at the end of 2018, there was $76 million in available capacity remaining for the city, or about 44%. Today, when you look at it, because of all the growth and smart strategic investments you've made into the community, you have now, even after the borrowings that we're talking about, 58% available capacity, $134 million in available capacity. So it really shows a pretty dramatic effect over the last several years that, you know, you've done smart investments and really grown with those investments to allow you to continue to be financially in a really great position. And Moody's took note of that and they recognize that. And it's pretty great to see. I mean, we were talking about it and even they commented that they haven't seen too many communities around Wisconsin that have grown over 50% since 2015. Oak Creek is one of the few, and she noted that when we were on a call. So it's pretty remarkable what the city has done. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions? Nothing. Got off easy.
Thank you.
I guess when the news is good, it's easy.
Yeah.
So, if there's no questions, discussion, motion, please.
We'll move to approve the plan of finance for $2,325,000 taxable general obligation refunding bonds.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Tolman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
And item 12 is consideration of a resolution authoring the issuance and establishing parameters for the sales of not to exceed $2,350,000 taxable general obligation refunding bonds. Max?
So Max Gagan, Assistant City Administrator and Comptroller. So this second item is just authorizing the City Administrator and the Assistant City Administrator Comptroller to execute the sale of our debt issuance based off of the plan of finance that was just adopted in the previous item. Happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Anything for Max? Self-explanatory. Okay, motion, please.
Owen will make a motion to adopt resolution number 12308, authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $2,350,000 taxable general obligation refunding bonds.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Tolman.
Aye.
Gale.
Same.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye. And item 13 is Public Works and Utility, and it's consideration of a resolution approving an amendment to the existing easement to Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewer District on the property at 9010 South Fifth Avenue.
Here, I'll be taking this.
I think so. You're the
Yes.
closest we got to public utilities.
Yes, Matt Sullivan, City Engineer. Before you, you have a council report for a motion to adopt a resolution accepting a new easement or amendment to an easement. Basically, in 1969, MMSD worked with Peter Cooper, the previous owner of that land, to create an easement where they were going to install sanitary sewer and manhole as needed. Unfortunately, during the recent of our acquirement of the property and work that's been done, we've done surveys and established the actual locations of those manholes and sanitary sewer lines, and it was discovered that they were outside of that easement in one area. So this amendment will actually correct that and provide an easement around their service and facilities. Basically cleaning up something that was done in the past. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, motion?
Owen will make a motion to adopt resolution number 12312, approving an amendment to existing easement with Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District on the property at 9010 South Fifth Avenue.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Dukenyak.
Aye.
Tolman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye. And item 14 and 15 are under engineering, and 14 is consideration of a resolution approving a termination and release of certain easements for the certified survey map number 7769 with DM Investment Real Estate LLC on the property at 8100 South 27th Street.
I'll be taking this one again, Mayor. As you all are aware, there is a development that has been approved and proposed at 8100 South 27th Street, known as 8100 at Oaks. This development and lands prior had a development called Colonial Woods Phase 2. Within that development, they had easements established for that development. With the new development that has been proposed and accepted, they do not match up with what's needed. So this is a simple document to release those easements and allow us to, or developer to go ahead and construct as needed.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Questions, comments concerning property at 8100 South 27th? Okay, seeing none, motion?
Clerk moves to adopt resolution number 12310-030122. Resolution approving a termination and release of certain easements for certified survey map number 7769 with DM Investment Real Estate LLC on the property at 8100 South 27th Street.
Dukenyak, second.
Roll call?
Alderman Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
And item 15 is consideration of a resolution approving a stormwater management practice maintenance agreement with Decker Properties, Inc. for the Oaks at 8100 development located at 8100 South 27th Street.
Thank you, Mayor. The resolution before you is pretty standard as far as stormwater management practices and maintenance agreements between developers in the city of Oak Creek. This is a standard boilerplate template, which actually had no changes from the developer. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Any questions from Matt? Now, as Matt said, this is pretty much standard language. The good part about this is we develop, though, usually we improve the stormwater quality, management of the property versus what's actually going on there, so. If there's no further discussions or questions, motion.
Clerk moves to adopt resolution number 12309-030122, a resolution approving a stormwater management practices maintenance agreement with Decker Properties, Inc. for the Oaks at 8100 development located at 8100 South 27th Street.
Dukenyak, second.
Roll call?
Alderman Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
And item 16 is the license committee. I'll turn that over to Alderman Kirkowski at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. I trust everybody's had an opportunity to review the items on the common council report for tonight's meeting. Does anybody have any questions, cares, or concerns? All right, hearing none, Kirkowski will make a motion to grant the various license requests as listed on the March 1st, 2022 License Committee report.
Dukenyak, second.
Roll call?
Alderman Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
And item 17 is consideration of a motion to approve the February 23rd, 2022 vendor summary report in the total of $483,814.99. Of this total, $13,417.09 will impact the 2021 fiscal year, with the remaining $470,397.90 impacting 2022. So if you take a look at your vendor summary report and direct any questions to the appropriate party that's present. You're satisfied? There's no questions, concerns? Motion.
We'll move to approve the February 23rd, 2022 vendor summary report in the total amount of $483,814.99.
Guzekowski, will second.
Roll call?
Alderman Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
And item 18 is consideration of a motion to convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute, Section 19.85, to discuss the following. Section 19.85, Sub 1, Sub C, to discuss the performance evaluation for the city administrator. And B, Section 19.85, Sub 1, Sub E, to discuss possible litigation and strategy for the environmental remediation of the properties at 9100 and 9170 South Fifth Avenue. President Gale.
Thank you, Mayor. Gail, move to convene in the closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute, section 19.85, to discuss the following: A, section 19.85, sub 1, sub C, to discuss the performance evaluation for the city administrator, and B, section 19.85, sub 1, sub E, to discuss possible litigation and strategy for environmental remediation of the properties at 9100 and 9170 South Fifth Avenue.
Guzekowski, a second.
Roll call.
Alderman Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski. Kirkowski.
Aye. We'll now convene in closed session and resume at its conclusion. Okay, we will now convene into open session. Motion, please.
Guzekowski, a second.
Roll call.
Alderman Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale. Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye. And no action will be taken out of closed session. So just before we adjourn, a couple announcements. Welcome to March. It is March 1st or Punchki Day, that Tuesday. Hope you enjoyed. It's also the start of National Women's Month. So again, want to thank all the women in the city of Oak Creek that lends such a great hand to our success here. As I said last year, there's not a department from protective services to city hall to water to every department, library, health, that isn't touched by females in this organization, right to our city attorney and our legal, so, and accounting. So, congratulations to you all, well deserved. And keep in mind, March 8th is International Women's Day, worldwide. So, keep that in mind. And that will get us to adjournment.
Kirkowski make a motion to adjourn.
Oracle second. Roll call.
Alderman Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Great. Thank you all. Have a great week.